So the next program we're going to look at is Canva. Just like Adobe Express, there's tons of stuff that we could do here in Canva, and there's a few different ways we can manipulate this image, but let's just start with bringing in our image. So if I go to Create, I'll just click the little plus sign. I can do Upload, and then we'll upload file. So I'll just drop it over here. We've been using this Grand Canyon image, and so I will just drag it over here and we'll upload pretty quickly. And then we have two choices we can use in a new design or edit image. So we're going to do edit image, and that'll load this into a project that we can then manipulate. So let's start with our adjustments. If I click the little down arrow here, it's still loading a little bit here. Canva does have a free version of their account, and there's a paid version. The free version has some of the functions we're going to look at today. If you do the paid version, then you would have access to all these Magic Studio features as well. But we're going to start here with Adjust. So if I click on Adjust, there is an auto adjust, but I typically don't use that. The first thing is white balance, so temperature and tint. And so if we move this more towards the right, you'll see the image becomes a little bit more yellow, and the image becomes a little more blue when we go to the left. I'll hit Reset Adjustments. Same thing with tint. If we wanted more of a sepia tone, we could raise this a little bit, or we can lower this and it gives it more of a greenish kind of sunset-y tint. So we'll reset that. I don't need to adjust my color temperature in this image. Then we get down to light. We have brightness and contrast, just like the other programs. Brightness is going to raise all of the levels up at the same time, so it's going to make everything brighter. Contrast is going to increase the difference between the brightest and the darkest points. So if I increase contrast, you're going to see it's going to add more difference, creating more shadows that are darker versus the brighter points here. So I think when we did Adobe Express, we put it around 30, and that looked pretty good for contrast. But for right now, we'll just turn this off. Reset that. We have highlights and shadows, just like Adobe Express. The highlights, when we raise those, are going to make the brighter parts brighter. If we take this the other direction, it's going to make the brighter parts darker. We'll just reset that. The shadows, if we want the shadows to be darker, down here in the canyon or underneath this plant, I can lower this down. That's going to make those shadows darker. If I want the shadows to be lighter, I'll just raise this up. So we'll reset. Then we have to have whites and blacks. So if I raise the white, you're going to see that the bright values in the image kind of get raised. If you go too high, it's going to look pretty bad. If I lower it, it's going to lower those bright values. Very similar to what highlights does, but not quite the same. Same thing with those black values. If I increase them, you're going to see the areas that already had a little bit of dark values get darker. And if I lower them, you're going to see those darker values get lighter. So let's reset. There is the invert color, which is just a little switch here on the project. You see these occasionally on TikTok videos, but we'll not use that. Then you have Vibrance and Saturation. Saturation raises the amount of color in the image. You can make it much more green and much more blue and much more red here in the mountains. Reset. And then Vibrance is a little more subtle of an effect. You have some color editing functions. We're going to skip those for right now. Then you have texture. So if we raise the sharpness, you'll start to see some of those details in the tree here. If you raise clarity, it's going to kind of make the image pop a little bit, so some of the lines will kind of pop out, very similar to what Sharpness does, but maybe less so, more subtle. And then you have a quick vignette. So a vignette just adds some darker spots around the image in the corners, and then those darker spots can kind of spread into the image depending on how large your vignette is. And then you can also drag it backwards, and that makes a reverse vignette where the corners are bright. So I'll reset all those. So that's some of the basic color adjustments here. And if we go back to the main menu, you'll see there's also filters. And if we click See All, you'll see there's a whole bunch. And you can just kind of sort through these. You can mix it with the original image, so that's what the intensity means. If you have it all the way to the right, that means it's fully using that filter. There's flint, bronze, sand, some cool filters, vivid. It's kind of neat looking. Rose, oceanic, fade. Some black and white ones, film stock, color pop. That's unique. Hibiscus. So anyway, so lots and lots of filters. We'll go back to none on there. So that's some of the main color controls and color adjustments. There are some effects, but we're going to skip those for right now because we didn't do that in the other programs. So now we're going to talk about resizing and kind of rescaling this image. So if I open up crop, it's going to bring up a series of options. Now the first thing, there's a freeform, there's original, but if I click over, I can eventually find one that says 16 by 9 or 9 by 16. So if I'm working on making those thumbnails, we've been making 16 by 9s for video. When I click that, it's going to automatically select what my crop would look like. Then I just have to move this to where I would like it to be in my image. So maybe we'll move this down a little bit. Try to get a little of that rock in there. If you had some perspective issues on your image, so depending on where this photo was taken, you can kind of fix some of those perspective issues, or you can get really weird effects depending on what you're going for here. We'll put this back to 0 and put this back to 0. So I can go back here and we'll do create design. When I do that, that should open up my project here. And once the project's opened up, we can look at the project settings. So right now it's set to 2048 by 1151, but I can go to resize potentially and resize this image. If I had the paid version, I could go to resize this image right here. Just like Adobe Express though, there's kind of a workaround for that. So if I just close this and we'll go create, and we're going to do a custom size. We're just going to do 1920 by 1080. Once again, if whatever size it is, have it in inches, centimeters, whatever size I would like, we'll do create new design. And then once that opens, I can just drag in this image. We'll go back to our original JPEG image of the Grand Canyon. Goes into my project. And then I'll close some of this stuff to get this out of the way. Then I can blow up this image. We'll just scale it up to fit the screen here. And looks like it needs to be just a little bit bigger. Go with that. And because my image is bigger than what I need, you know, my image is almost twice as big as what I need, I'm able to stretch it like this. If your picture was really, really small, you wouldn't be able to scale it like this. Now that I've got it stretched like that, I can download it, so we'll just do share. We'll do download. I have PNG, JPEG, PDF. There's all kinds of different formats. You can also go with GIFs out of here. But we'll do PNG, and we'll click download. It'll take it a couple seconds. And then I'll also do share, download, and we'll do JPG. So I renamed those two files. I'll just hit spacebar here, and you can see there's the PNG, and there's the JPEG image. There's tons and tons more stuff we could do in Canva, but that at least gives you an idea of what it would be like to resize an image and do some basic adjustments on your photos using Canva.